Thank everybody for coming. We have quite a bit of people here tonight. Appreciate everybody coming. We're trying to just do these things on a routine basis to provide what information we're finding out as it comes in. We have asked DNR to be here. They are here. Mr. Schutz, the secretary, as well as the Shaw Group, representatives from the Shaw Group there, contractors and consultants regarding a lot of the work that's being done by the DNR in the community. In addition to that, we do have a representative from DOTD, DEQ, and I think Department of Public Health here tonight to possibly answer any questions about their role in this matter. Also, Mr. Sonny Cranch, Mr. Mark Cartwright from Texas Brine were asked to be here to give us an update of what's going on their facility. So they're going to provide some information as well. What we're going to do is we're first going to ask Mr. Cartwright. He's with Texas Brine. He's one of the gentlemen I think that first met with you all when we met here the first time and talked to you all about what's going on. We've asked them to come and give a briefing or information as to what's going on their premises, on their site, and what matters are they doing on their property to try to mitigate this event. So at this time, we'll ask Mr. Cartwright to come forward. We'll have some brief questions after, and then what we're going to try to do is then go through the different state agencies, and we'll have questions after that so we can get through the information that the state agencies have as well. Thank you.
Well, good evening. It's been a while since I've been here, and forgive me if I leave some things off or maybe overachieve a little bit. I was not at the last public meeting, which I guess was 2 weeks ago. Is that right? Okay. But what I'll attempt to do tonight is give everybody a rundown on our current recovery process, the operations that are taking place at the facility, and then a little bit of a discussion on where we intend to go in the future. I guess for starters, let me just report that the reentry well 3A has apparently completed, or not completed, but has apparently emptied itself of most recoverable hydrocarbons. We've produced about 2,800 barrels from the cavern, and based upon our observations of the wellhead pressure, it appears that most of the oil that was in the cavern has been produced. As you've probably heard mentioned before, one of the big questions for us is in producing the well or in re-entering the well and finding hydrocarbons was to determine whether or not it was a finite source or if there is a sustained supply of oil that's coming into the cavern. And based on what we've seen thus far, it looks like a finite source, and that's good for everybody because that tells us that the potential is greater that this oil production problem will diminish. And of course, if that diminishes, we hope also that the gas problem will diminish. So I'm happy to report we've got nearly all the oil out of the cavern, at least that which can be produced. And we're still seeing a slight amount of pressure increase as we shut the well in and leave it shut in overnight. But most of that is because of gas that's coming out of the cavern. You have to imagine that within the cavern there's a lot of solids. Those solids have a lot of oil and gas that's still trapped within the solid material. And given enough time, it's liberated from the solids and then floats up on top of the brine within the cavern. So our plan going forward is to continue to monitor the well and continue to produce it as it forms any amount of accumulation of oil and gas that we can recover. The monitoring process will include pressure transmitters and electronic recorders that will give us real-time information in our control room. And that data will be plugged into what's called a programmable logic control. That is a device that essentially takes human commands and reacts to what it sees from the digital information that comes into the PLC. And what we intend to do, and this is in response to what DNR has asked of us, and of course Shaw, what we intend to do is set up a system where if the cavern were to experience any kind of dramatic, sudden pressure increase or decline, it would automatically alert our technicians, and then our technicians will be able to pick up the phone and call the Assumption Parish OEP, the Assumption Parish Sheriff's Office, and DNR, and let them know that we've had an unusual observation in the pressure of the cavern. So that's a work in progress. Our final plan will be in place tonight. We already have a draft together, and then I would expect that Sean, DNR, and maybe the parish will talk a little bit about what they intend to do in the event of an alarm. So that's where we are with the cavern. Also taking place as we speak, we're just finishing up the completion or near completion of the relief well that's on Texas Brine property. This is a approximately 150, 160 foot, 9 5/8 inch cased hole that's very similar to the 3 wells that Shaw has installed around Bayou Corn. In the process that we were working on today was the cleaning out of the 9 5/8. That's been done. Tomorrow we expect to come in and conduct a wireline logging of the well and look for areas where gas may be accumulated behind that 9 5/8. And then we'll go in with a wireline tool and perforate those zones where we suspect to find gas. And of course, if there's gas in the ground out there, we'll be able to produce it and flare it off. So that's another piece of work that's going on today, and will continue to go on for the next couple of days. And then I guess the final major component of our work is the sinkhole cleanup. We have just about all of the vegetation pulled off the sinkhole, which has been very helpful for us in oil recovery. And we continue to pull oil off the surface. Gas bubbling does continue. We've pulled approximately 600 barrels total from the sinkhole. We've yet to see any indications or any signs that there is a sustained volume of oil coming up into the sinkhole, which is good for us. We don't want to see that. We've gone so far as to partition the sinkhole and using fan boats and the benefit of a north wind, we've been able to get the oil to accumulate on one bank where we were able to operate and skim most of it off the hole. And by setting up that partition, we've been able to monitor more closely at least half of the sinkhole and look for the reaccumulation of any oil, and we've not seen that. So I think that's favorable. And I would also say we've got a number of initiatives that are in place, in progress. We intend to run a vertical seismic profile on the re-entry well once the oil and gas is completely depleted, and we can take that well out of service for that purpose. We also intend to go into the community of Bayou Corn and install at least 7 geoprobe wells. 2 of those will penetrate the top of the aquifer, and they'll be used to monitor and look for any gas, and of course any gas pressure that might be accumulating underneath that 100-foot so clay layer that overlies the sands in that community. So 2 of them will be deep, and then we'll have at least 5 that will be shallow, relatively shallow, 40 or 50 feet. They will be driven down into the first little relatively small sand layer that's within that 100-foot clay. And likewise, they will be used for monitoring pressure. And we'll also be able to use all of these wells for taking water samples to monitor the quality of the water. In addition to that purpose, we intend to rig each of these probes up with a benchmark. And the benchmark will be used for level surveying, where we can come in with surveying crews and essentially look out across the community and shoot elevations for each of these probe wells and determine if there's been any kind of relative ground movement. So I think it'll help in that regard to assure ourselves that we don't have anything dramatic going on, in terms of subsidence in the community. I'm trying to think of other things in place. Yeah, well, the vertical seismic. And right, I'm sorry. The core well, most of you will recall, we put a what we call our overburden characterization hole, which is basically a core well, which was sunk all the way down to the cap rock for the purposes of identifying the geology, the shallow geology over the cap rock. That work was completed weeks ago, and our plan was and continues to be to establish an array, a subsurface array of geophones. And these are devices that will record and look Now, that array will be coupled with a surface array that one of our industry partners on the dome is installing, and all of those will be integrated to form another early warning type device, if you will. Very similar to what the USGS had in its installations out on the surface. This will be actually a step above that because they'll be embedded below ground, they'll be more permanent, and of course the geophones that we're going to put in the core hole will extend to hundreds of feet below the ground, which will give us, I think, a much better perspective for what's happening seismically.
What's the time frame?
Time frame, we're probably, well, we expect to have the release well completed this week. We should have it perforated as early as tomorrow. The geophones those are kind of a long lead item. They take a good amount of time, but we placed orders for those weeks ago. I expect that we'll have them in the ground probably within the next 2 weeks. Okay. Our goal, our objective on the geoprobes, which we intend to install in the community, will be construction starting in about 2 weeks. That's our goal. Now we're going to need to go out and seek and execute agreements with property owners to give us the rights to come in and put probes. Very similar to what Shaw did with Dion.